Is anybody over 30? Anybody? What do you think is going to happen to your memory as you get older every decade? How many people think it's going to improve? Not too many of us. How about your sex life? All right. Who knows someone who's suffered from dementia or Alzheimer's? Who's worried about dementia or Alzheimer's themselves? Good, well, I'm speaking to the right group of people. And what we're going to focus on is a way of living, the research-validated things, the things we now know very clearly that can help you continue to improve your memory, your sex life, the meaning and purpose of your life, and the research-validated, practical, simple things that all of us can do to prevent dementia. Now, I don't yet know of anything in the research that shows that once it sets in, you can reverse it. So it's really important to do all the things that we can do. But the first thing I want to do is reframe the notion of preventing dementia, because we have a saying, I don't know if they have this in footy, but in American football, we say that the best defense is a good offense. That it's better to take a proactive, positive approach. So our focus is going to be the one thing I want you to take away from our session today. That's why I just have one PowerPoint slide, because I want you to keep reading this message the whole time. I want to really sink it deep into your heart and your brain, that your brain is designed to improve with use. Your mind is designed to improve with use. And the critical question then becomes, what are the best ways to use it? What are the best ways to use it? So that's what we're going to discuss. And I got to tell you, I've been teaching a lot of this kind of material for the last 30 years. But I just had my 60th birthday, so now it's really serious. And I think that's the main thing, is that as the decades go by, our margin for error gets less. So we need to be more focused on doing everything that we can do to actually improve as we get older. And the first research-validated thing you can do to actually improve as you get older is to fully understand that your brain is designed to improve as you get older. Now that sounds sort of a tautology, but let me explain. We all grew up with a notion about our potential that was the established understanding of neuroscience in the 50s and the 60s. And that notion was that your brain development ends at age 7. And there's nothing that you can do about it after that. Moreover, we believe that once you hit age 30, your brain began to degrade, and that there was nothing you could do about that. So you've heard, we're going to hear it a lot, you're meeting some of the world's leading experts who've actually done the research to establish this new paradigm. And your scientists don't just create new words willy-nilly. They only come up with a new word when the research really shows that there's a new phenomenon that we need a new word to express this new phenomenon. So you know this new word, you know the word neuroplasticity. Neuro, brain cell, plasticity, what does that mean? Pliable, changeable, adaptable. It means your brain can change. So Dr. Norman Doidge wrote this great book called The Brain That Changes Itself. He's one of the leaders in applied clinical neuroplasticity. And in the review of his book, the New York Times science section, which is not known as a particularly big supporter of personal development type work, the New York Times science section wrote, "The power of positive thinking finally gains scientific credibility." The power of positive thinking finally gains scientific credibility. So we have this new word representing this new paradigm of understanding neuroplasticity. Your brain can change. There's another new word. It's even newer than neuroplasticity. Have you heard the term neurogenesis? Neurobrain cell. What does genesis mean? Birth, growth. We can create new brain cells. More importantly, we can make new connections between the ones we have. You learned this morning already that you have 100 billion brain cells, and that the number of possible connections between them is greater than the estimated number of atoms that exist in the universe. You've also probably heard the notion that you only use a small percentage of those. 10%. Well, you know, it used to be 10%, but apparently the estimates are going down. This may be because of reality TV, I don't know. The latest I heard is 1%. But see, here's the good news. So you know this old notion, too, that you lost 1,000 brain cells every day as you hit the age 30? But that would still be less than 1% of the total. You just have to make sure it's not the 1% you're actually using. So I was thinking, how can I get people to really understand just how powerful this new paradigm is, neuroplasticity, neurogenesis? I thought I needed to make up some new words for the old paradigm, the one we grew up with, and the one that still forms for a lot of us our operating system, our core attitude towards the process of getting older. So I made up some new words. The old paradigm, the one we all grew up with, the one that still dominates society because it takes a long time for society to really translate the leaps of science into our everyday understanding. The old paradigm I call neurostatic. It was neurostatic, wasn't it? It's the opposite of neuroplastic. It was neurostatic. It said your brain is fixed. Age 7, there's nothing you can do about it. By that time, you're either dumb or you're smart. That's it. Future determined. Thank you very much. But it's even worse than that, because the old paradigm also said that starting at age 30, you were declining and there was nothing you could do about it. I call it the neuronecrotic paradigm. Necrosis means death, right? And we really grew up with a neurostatic, neuronecrotic paradigm. And if you doubt it, just turn on your television and look at the images of older people that are presented to us in the media. You only really see older folks in pharmaceutical commercials. We have a fellow have you heard of Dave Barry? He's a noted American philosopher. Actually, he's a comedy writer. And he says, same difference in my world. He says that the image of aging in advertising is made to look about it as attractive as death by maggot. So, first thing is to really understand neuroplasticity, neurogenesis. We've now established your brain is actually designed to improve as you use it. And I want to just do a reality check for you. 3 years ago, had a total hip replacement. 11 months ago, I had a total knee replacement. It was rough, I got to say. But the truth is, I wore these parts out. I did martial arts every day of my life. I did every kind of sport I could possibly do. I just wore them out. I mean, you could see the x-ray. The hip joint was just in little pieces. I had to get a new one. The knee was gone. Had to get a new one. Thank God you can get replacement parts for these things. I'm up and running. So I'm aware of some of the challenges that come along as the decades roll by. There are parts of us that definitely do wear out as we use them, but the really fabulous news is your brain is not one of those parts. It's designed to improve as you use it. So, did you hear about the counterclockwise study from Professor Ellen Langer. Isn't it cool? You know a scientific study is cool when they're making a movie out of it. No kidding, starring Jennifer Aniston as Dr. Ellen Langer. And this was a study done in 1979. Langer arranged for two groups of older men who had been in the care of relatives to each, on different weeks, spend a week at this converted monastery up in New Hampshire. And of course, she tested them on mental and physical parameters before and after. And the first group of men was invited to come away for a week and enjoy a lovely week in which they reminisced about their lives 20 years ago. So that was the theme of the week, get together and reminisce. And at the end of the week, they showed some minor improvements in both physical and mental elements that were measured. They had a pleasant week. The second group was asked to live for a week as though they were 20 years younger, to fully adopt the sense of themselves in 1959. So they helped them by playing the music that was popular in 1959, watching the TV shows that were popular, black and white TV, of course, in 1959, debating the issues of the day of 1959. At the end of the week, the men blew away all the parameters. Their memory improved, their mental acuity improved across lots of different scales, their reaction time improved, their perceived sense of well-being, which is a fancy term for happiness, went way up. But you know what's the coolest thing that happened to them in the course of 1 week of just thinking differently about how old they were? Their shriveled arthritic fingers actually lengthened in the course of 1 week of thinking differently about how old they were. Have you heard of Satchel Paige? Satchel Paige was an American baseball pitcher. He was African American. He suffered great discrimination, so he didn't get a chance to play in the major leagues until he was 42 years old, at which point he was a fantastic superstar. And they were amazed that he was able to do this at age 42. And Satchel Paige said, "How old would you be if you didn't know how old you was?" So Langer's colleague, Dr. Becca Levy, did a long-term study of 650 subjects divided into two groups: those who had a negative attitude towards aging, who believed their best days were behind them; those who had a positive attitude towards aging. The positive attitude group outlived the negative attitude group on average more than 7 years. The power of positive thinking finally gains scientific credibility. And this is not magic. This is not woo-woo new age. We know that when you think positively, you're strengthening your immune system in the moment. We can measure it now, moment to moment. So add up those moments over the course of 10, 20, 30, 40 years, you'll live 7 years longer. So what are the most adaptive attitudes besides optimism and realizing that your brain is designed to improve with use? Well, I prescribe a daily dose of GFH. It's not the latest anti-aging serum. It stands for gratitude, forgiveness, and humor. Take a major dose every day and dispense it to everybody that you meet. And eliminate, please, from your vocabulary the term anti-aging. Another great philosopher, Frank Zappa, said, "In the battle between you and the universe, I'm betting on the universe." Resistance is futile. It's about aging gracefully, joyously, and optimizing every moment of our lives. And gratitude, forgiveness, humor, a sense of purpose. If you don't have a sense of purpose in your life right now, I'll give it to you. Find your sense of purpose. People with a clear sense of purpose are much more resistant to all forms of dementia. Nietzsche said the commonest form of stupidity is forgetting your purpose. So, point number one, attitude. You can see how critical it is. Number two, learn something new every single day. So you probably heard about the famous experiment. It was actually done by Professor Joe Verghese and his colleagues. It was published originally in the New England Journal of Medicine. It got lots of publicity, and for some reason people emphasized the notion of doing crossword puzzles, which it turns out were way down on the list in terms of the things you can do to actually prevent dementia and strengthen your brain. And the key about crossword puzzles, if you like them, you just have to keep on doing different levels of difficulty. The most powerful brain-strengthening exercises from Verghese's study were learning to play chess, learning to play bridge or Go or other mental sports, learning a new language, learning to play a musical instrument. And then some German researchers at the University of Regensburg, Professor Arne May and his colleagues, did another study where they found that adults who practiced juggling for 15 minutes a day over the course of 3 months showed measurable, dramatic improvements in their brains. Now, this was significant for 2 reasons. One is, as a former professional juggler who worked his way through graduate school, juggling at children's parties and at tourist nightclubs in London, I was thrilled to hear this, and I always intuitively suspected that that was indeed the case. But it was also one of the many, many experiments that help establish the new paradigm of neuroplasticity. And it's just technology that allowed us to figure this out. In the 50s, we didn't have a way of wiring up your brain, of measuring it. We didn't have an MRI to look at the changes in your brain as you learn something new. Now we can measure it. Now we can watch it be plastic and adaptable and changeable. And it turns out juggling is one of the absolute best things you can do for your brain. So, 5 o'clock, I hope you saw it on the program. You see that little ball you have in your bag? There's a method to our madness. We are all going to learn how to juggle. And if you're thinking, oh no, I'll never learn how to juggle, I can't do that, blah, 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 my hand-eye coordination, I have a very liberating, powerful, wonderful thought for you. Because, I talked to, you know who Dr. Dan Amen is? He wrote a book called Magnificent Mind at Any Age. He's a brilliant, wonderful guy. And I wrote to him a couple of times. I said, what if people don't want to juggle? It's hard for me to imagine, I know, but what if they don't want to play chess or bridge? And we went back and forth, and what Dr. Amen said is, what it really comes down to is challenge and novelty. Challenge and novelty are what yields the brain benefits. And all it takes is 15 minutes a day. I also recommend the Posit Science program. I think you're going to learn more about that later on today. So the more challenging something is, the more it is recruiting parts of your brain that are dormant. And the even better news, people say the thing, use it or lose it. It's not true. Use it or it goes dormant. You can still call upon it at any age. I mean, starting today. So learn something new every day, 15 minutes. Novelty and challenge are the most important elements. It's just a little workout for your brain. Exercise and nutrition, and they go hand in hand. Much of what passes for senility is oxygen depletion to the brain. Your brain is about 2% of your body's weight. It uses more than 20% of the oxygen. So, classic study, they test some older people, memory. They go into an oxygen tent for 15 minutes. What happens to their scores on the memory test? Goes right up. Same thing, memory test, carotid artery surgery. Blood flow, therefore oxygen to the brain. Memory test after the surgery, scores go up. Do not wait for an oxygen tent or carotid artery surgery. Get moving every day. Even if you're in a wheelchair, you can do yoga in a wheelchair. You can do Tai Chi in a wheelchair. You can even get the benefit of this by moving your mind and visualizing the movements. If you're able to, get up and go for a walk. Get on a bike, go dancing, do Tai Chi, do Qigong, do yoga. Find something you love and do it every single day. I interviewed Dr. Walter Bortz, who's 80 years old. He wrote the book, Living Longer for Dummies. And it's great because I wrote this piece about Dr. Bortz, and with all these scientists, gerontologists that I interviewed, I always, before I published the book, I always send what I'm writing that refers to them and ask them to approve it, critique it, make sure it's accurate. So I write this piece about Bortz. I say Dr. Walter Bortz, age 80, one of the world's leading gerontologists, wrote Living Longer for Dummies. Bortz has run 39 marathons. I get this email back from him. He says, correction. I just ran my 40th marathon. Actually, I want to read you something that Bortz, this is a quote from Bortz. There's a lifetime of research into how we function as we get older. He says, almost everything we have been taught about growing older has been wrong. Frailty, heart disease, loss of an active sex life, and memory loss are just a few problems typically associated with aging. All of these symptoms have less to do with chronology than with lack of conditioning. In other words, conditioning trumps chronology. The good news, too, you start to exercise, it's easier to make more mindful choices about what you eat. Your metabolism works much better. You feel better. Your perceived sense of well-being goes up. Diet is a tough area. There's a zillion books and articles. You're bombarded. But in the Brain Power book, what I aim to do is summarize the things that are pretty much a universal consensus certainly among the neuroscientists that I talk to. And I'm a very practical person because I also ask them, what do you actually do? What do you eat or not eat yourself? And there's some things that are just a total consensus, really clear. I couldn't find one neuroscientist who said, it's good to be dehydrated. Don't drink water. Drink lots of diet soda. That would be, no, not any single one of them said, more water. Most of us suffer from chronic, low-level dehydration. Your brain's 80% water. Minimize sugar, minimize additives, obviously. It really is summed up by the quote from Michael Pollan, which is, don't eat anything that your great-grandmother wouldn't recognize as food. But there's another element, too, which is very positive, which is to enjoy dining. It's the most reliable pleasure. Tune in. Ask yourself the question, how hungry am I now? What am I really in the mood for? And how will I feel after I eat it? That'll save you lots of diet books and lots of angst and agony. And plus, there's other really good research-based good news that moderate red wine with dinner will improve your joie de vivre, put more dolce in your vita, and your wellness. High-quality dark chocolate. Try a little chocolate tasting, 60%, 70%, 82%. Let it just melt in your mouth. Your perceived sense of well-being will go right up. Create for yourself and your loved ones what I call a brain-nourishing environment. A brain-nourishing environment. So classic study, Dr. Mark Rosenzweig, Dr. Marion Diamond are some of the leaders in this work. You've heard about the stimulus-deprived versus the stimulus-rich rats. The stimulus-deprived rats are kept in the rat equivalent of cubicles. Stimulus-rich rats get to play all sorts of fun mazes and rat puzzles. The stimulus-deprived rats, their brains shrink, and they're not very good at solving mazes. The stimulus-rich rats, their brains are robust, and they solve puzzles effortlessly. Why do we use rats for these experiments? Because their nervous systems mirror ours. The default setting in our world today is stimulus deprived. It's an assault on your senses. I was in, Adelaide. And I went to the gym at my hotel because I want to practice principle number 3 about exercise. I want to get on the exercise bike. There are 8 televisions, each with an image more vile and hideous and gross than the one before. Fortunately, Adelaide has that beautiful Torrens River with the black swans. I said, I'm getting out of here. I'm going for a walk outside. You heard Karen Carey talk about the power and beauty of music. And one of the great things about music is you can embrace it and enrich your brain at any age purely by deepening your appreciation. When you appreciate great art, you meet the artist at the place of creation, and you're stimulating your mind, your heart, your soul. So when you come to our house in Santa Fe, New Mexico, in our house, we just have a default setting of music. It's Mozart. 20 hours of Mozart. Did you know about the Mozart effect? Pioneered by my friend Don Campbell, who wrote about the original research when students in University of California listened to Mozart before a test of spatial reasoning. Their scores went up. So this set off this huge explosion of study on the field, and they found that patients in hospital wards where they play Mozart music have lower infection rates. Plants grow better. A lot of wineries are playing Mozart to their vines to make better wine. But my favorite is they found that dairies, when they play Mozart to the cows give more milk. They call it the Mozart effect. So create a brain-nourishing environment. Think of everything that you come in touch with on a sensory basis every day as nourishment for your brain. The default setting in our world is vile junk food. The good news is you can get access to Mozart, you can put Leonardo da Vinci on your screensaver, you can put a fresh flower, you can read a poem, you can share this with others, enrich your brain, enrich the brains of those around you. The next one is part of creating a brain-nourishing environment, but it's just so important I made it its own chapter, and that is to invest in your social wealth. Friendships, caring, love makes a huge difference. One classic study, people age 80, they follow them over the next 5 years. Those who define themselves as lonely were more than twice as likely to come down with dementia. People who had 3 or more active social positive engagements every week, much more resistant. But it takes a more concerted effort as we get older, as George Burns said when he hit 100. He said, I'd like to go out with women my own age. There aren't any left. And then, really important, rest, naps. You know, I pay attention when there's something that all the great geniuses of history do. They all take naps, Leonardo, Thomas Edison. NASA pilots in a study by Dr. Mark Rosekind, 20-minute nap, 36% improvement in performance. And of course, meditation, which is a way of getting concentrated rest and dramatically raising your perceived sense of well-being, as Alan shared with us. So, when I was coming to the end of the book, and I never liked conclusions. But you know, Stephen Covey said, begin with the end in mind. So I came up with a way to end the book that I thought was kind of fun. My favorite last words that people have said in human history. Because the point of this is I want you to think about going out with real aplomb. Wouldn't it be great if you could just say something really witty or clever, meaningful or philosophical as a result of the fact that you constantly were improving your brain? You're right there, and your exit line is just smashing. So listen to some of these. One of my favorites was Renoir. As he died, he painted a picture of a flower, and he said, I think I'm beginning to learn something about art. Groucho Marx said, die? Why, that's the last thing I'll do. Oh, this one's great. Humphrey Bogart said, I never should have switched from scotch to martinis. Oscar Wilde, while sipping champagne on his deathbed, said, either that wallpaper goes or I do. But my very favorite one, because it really embodies the mindful love of learning, this is from Dominique Bonheur, who was a French Jesuit essayist and noted grammarian. And Dominique's last words were, I am about to, or I am going to die. Either expression is correct. Thank you very much. Thank you.